Thinking about diving into the world of independent animation and trying to think about what kind of independent animation project you could tackle? Well, let's talk about it. Hey guys, it's TVPAINT, and today I'd like to talk about independent animation. Now, independent animation is something that I've been interested in quite a while. I've actually been trying to delve into it, trying to make my own productions outside of my full-time job within the industry. I think the industry and the studio system, there's a lot of things that I don't really agree with. So in order to fulfill that craving, that creativity craving that I have, I want to go more into the independent animation scene. Now, what qualifies as independent animation? Is it based on the size of the production force? Is it based on the style or the subject matter or even the format of the animation? Are they full-on pilots and episodes that rival studio work, or are they just micro-sized vignettes that won't take very long to finish watching? Now, everyone has their own ideal of what independent animation can be. Some people will point at something like VivziePop's Hell of a Boss series or the Lackadaisy Cats as ideal independent animation, or something that is more self-sustainable like Worthy Kids or Hofstyle, or even my friend Matt Yang, who can make little projects all by themselves without having to rely on a big community to get something done. Now, the way I would describe independent animation is a production that does not adhere to a corporation or the backings of many different corporations. I would say everything is funded and produced within the independent animation team. They might need to find distributors and investors, but it's a creator and the team that have full autonomy for the project. So that's a huge umbrella of independent animation. It's vast. There's a lot of different types. And that's why I don't agree with someone that takes an independent project that clearly has a huge fan base of its own, a huge production, a huge community, and saying, this is raising the bar for independent animation and this is where independent animation should be. But I have to say, having a hot intellectual property is some good currency right now. Now, I want to talk about different types of independent animation projects you could tackle if you want to tell your own stories with animation independently. You could do a small test, whether that's storyboarding or animation. These could range from a few seconds to a minute. They could just be cool animation tests or even a joke or a gag. Animators like Teleporte and Keke Flip Notes are great examples of these because not only are they well known, but they have produced a lot because again, it's simple, it's self-sustainable, and it doesn't require so much. I mean, one of them is animating on a Nintendo DS. I personally think this is a great place to start because you want to dip your toes into things first and just feel things out. And it allows you to be fun, have a lot of fun, be an idiot that encourages experimentation, something that a lot of people are afraid to do. Let's say you have a story idea with characters in a world. What you could do is take a character from your idea and animate a simple test. I like to resort to my character doing a dancing loop because it's fun, it's easy, and if I wanted to, I could make many more with many other characters. I feel like my dancing dogs is how I got my followers. And again, most of these aren't really fully colored, they aren't fully produced, some of them are just mere pencil tests. Next, let's talk about animatic story reels and story times. Now, these are projects that aren't really considered full animation, but they tell a story visually with video and some animation skills. People like Rad Seacrest, Akil Art, and even Ethan Becker fall into this category where they express through the means of storyboards and animatics, and maybe story reels rather than fully animated productions. This is a great place to explore if the priority is more on the visual storytelling and telling a bit of a bigger story without killing yourself with all that labor work of animation. Now, the great thing about these is that you can tell your story followed by music, dialogue, sound, and even your editing skills. With a finished animatic, you can decide if you want to take a step further and make a full production out of it. At least you have a storyboard and a foundation that's already done. Now, depending how your storyboard or animatic looks, it can already pass off as a final product. Now, some storyboards look really rough. That might not appeal to a lot of viewers, but if you find a way to have that marriage between limited look, but at the same time looks finished, your animatics can be the finished product. In the YouTube scene, there's the whole story time animation, which is they have a character that tells a story that happened in their life or whatever that's followed with key pose animation. That's usually the case, but some of them have higher production value where there is a bit more visual storytelling and storyboarding work. Then there's smaller projects like skits and shorts with limited budget. I think for independent animation to thrive, you have to be smart working with the limitations you have, and to show that telling short skits with engaging stories and characters can be done without the backing of a lot of money, a lot of people, and a studio. Artist and animator Worthy Kids comes to mind, who has made some great skits and mini-series. He's also done a bunch of parodies. Simon's Cat also comes to mind. It's well animated, but it's also smart in terms of the visual look that allows less steps, such as no color. I think if you were just to find the small clips of Fox in Space, I think this also falls into the category. You don't need something to be fully animated for it to be engaging. You can sell the aesthetic, the vibe, and the overall storytelling. These can also be vignettes. They don't need to be fully finished skits or stories. They can just be a moment in life. Your character's doing something, and I think this is a type of project that's undervalued. Again, you don't need something to be fully animated for it to be engaging, because animation is an incredibly diverse medium and people relate to a lot of different things other than fully in between keys and drawings. If you go for animated projects like these, I would say try to aim within the minute range. I wouldn't go beyond 5 minutes because that gets really hard to sort of manage. The next one after this I would like to call short film features. I guess short films that try to go for Best Animated Short or Academy Award fall into this category. They're usually highly produced short films. That's usually the case, especially when the short films come from Pixar or Disney. You can tell there's budget involved, whether it's student films or films from a studio. They feel like films made with a budget from a major studio. It's true that you don't need a crazy budget to make a highly produced looking film, but you also have to realize it can take a lot of time, effort, hard work, and energy. Hiring artists and other talents can smoothen that, but that's also a work of its own when you're dealing with human management. It's a whole skill of its own, and production management. I think if you decide to work on a short film for a full year or more, you'd probably have something that feels fully produced. This is the type of project I see people trying to push for film festivals, or students making films that cater to studios that say, hey, look at what I can do, hire me. But again, even the smaller films that I talked about earlier can count as worthy films for independent films or even film festivals. I think for this category, I would say my student films because, again, they took me a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of production mileage on it. It's not perfect, but you can tell there's a lot of work put into it. Last but not least, full-on episodes, pilots, and features. Now, these are independent creators who can make full-on pilots, and the ones I know that make feature films completely by themselves. Vivzy Pop is a prime example of this, having a huge fan base and making full-on pilots and episodes with Has-Been Hotel, Hell of a Boss, amongst others. Now, my friend Denver Jackson, who has his own studio called Cloud Race Pictures, has made feature films and full-length episodes completely by himself. Yet, he doesn't have the fan base I think he totally deserves. Now, again, these are creators who can make studio-quality full-length episodes made internally within the creative team. It could be done with many people, or it could be done with just a few or one person. It's also the most expensive, most laborious, and the most stressful when I think about it. The reason why Vivzy Pop's episodic animation works is because there are so many hands involved on it. If you're someone that just wants to make independent animation and is new to the scene of independent animation, I would advise against starting with full-on pilots. The ones who usually do are able to pull it off and are people who have done many projects already, so they already have a system set in place. So what are my overall thoughts and opinions about this? I think if you're relatively new, just make small, simple tests or super short films under 30 seconds. If you have a story you want to tell but don't want to fully animate it, maybe try storyboarding and put it into an animatic or reel. That can be your overall independent project. I personally think for independent animation to thrive, definitely something that feels sustainable and smartly done, meaning you're turning the limitations to its advantage. Black and white films might be considered easier to do because you don't have to think about color palettes and hues and all that, but it also allows you to focus on the strengths of the black and white direction. Sometimes too much added elements can work against you and make things unnecessarily complex for the pipeline, and can make things seem overly done just for the sake of overly being done. But again, one of the reasons why I encourage you guys to start with something small is make a lot of mistakes, make small things. And when you're making small things, you put them up, you start building a following, you start building community. Keep making more small things, you start building more of a community. Then maybe you start becoming more confident in your skills, you start being more bold in your work, so you start making bigger projects, more ambitious projects, and then you're going to gain more and more of a community. Start with small things. Level 1. Maybe you do a small animated test of your original character, so people get curious about the original character. Then you start thinking about bigger projects featuring that character, and already that character has interest within the community that you're building or the followers that you're building. Anyways, that's all. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.